Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to a software design review. This is a language completeness and consistency meeting about, as always, Wolfram language. And looks like we have three topics here. Let's start off talking about the output size limiter. Okay.
Right. We've been working on the redesign, so it's been a few months since you last saw this, but we think this is the final version.
Looks pretty good to me. I mean, so this is this live?
Well, that one isn't because it's from a previous kernel session, but if you just reevaluate it.
And how do I know that?
Currently, if you click on any of those, it'll let you know that.
Could it know at the stage where you're actually doing the clicking? Could it already have graded it somehow, or is it not worth it?
It can probably detect the case when you're in a new kernel session. It won't be able to detect the case that someone has been mucking about with dollar history length or clearing out or things like that. But I could investigate at least detecting the new kernel session.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, then it could say this size in memory is irrelevant. Right? And by the way, please make it not say 8 point.
Understood.
We need a general way to do that. Do we have a general function that does the right thing with formatting numbers, that doesn't leave a trailing point, even when it's decimal, when it doesn't need one?
I'm not aware of one.
It's a question for Nick and Jose.
I was thinking, I don't think we have one.
I think we need one.
I was suddenly wondering if, of course, alpha has one, or if alpha does not have one. It might be that alpha turns it into 8.0. That would be my guess.
Well, but
no,
let's
alpha
find
goes
out.
the other way, doesn't it? It turns 8.0 into 8.
Oh, well, let's just see.
Yeah, but be that as it may, we now have decimal form and all those kinds of things. I think we need a good default form, which in cases of output like this, just does it automatically.
We have implemented that in percent form, but I think that's the only one.
Okay, well, let's have a general way of doing it. I mean, what should it be called? Can we try and look through number form and decimal form and so on? And also, you know, when you insert this in a string, arguably the insertion function should automatically do this. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, I've had to change this so many millions of times. I don't think I should have to. Am I making sense?
I don't think you're making sense. I mean,
well, you understand
whenever you do toString, it should magically strip out the.
No, I'm saying when I say string template, hello, backtick, comma, list 5 point. Whoops, I didn't do that. What do I want to do here? I just want to say 5 point though. Okay, I don't know how it came to make it 5.0. It's nice, actually. I wonder how it made it 5.0. Do you understand what I'm asking?
I understand. And the short answer is I don't know how string template does that.
I suspect that it's using that famous
I mean, it may be using number form with, you
No,
know.
I don't think so.
No, it's probably using that text, right? The function that magically turns your number into
It's using text.
Yeah.
String. Okay, so let's take a look at what
you know, the second example there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Brett's right about alpha. And so Carl would be the person to talk to if that's code that you want to steal.
Which, I mean, I have to say the alpha behavior drives me nuts.
Right, but of course,
because I do, you know, control equal 1.0 meters. And it turns it into 1 meter, and now I have an exact computation where it wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah.
Ouch.
And that's right. And I agree with you. I think the conversion to Wolfram language input form shouldn't be the same as the conversion to display
Yes,
form.
it should.
Right. So, right, which is a point I was about to make, which is, I don't know if that 8 in that megabyte is at all selectable. If it's not selectable, it's not an issue. But we can strip the period, and it's not an issue. But if it's something that might be copied and then used as input, then there's a semantic difference between the dot and not dotted versions.
Sure. But if it was using string template, then this should have 8.0'd it, which would have been just fine. Right? So I don't know how it generated the 8 point and string.
Well, it probably just, right, that's probably just like a row or a quantity, a row of a quantity, I would guess.
So the thing that
right.
we're not understanding correctly is that string template does something different, which is probably the right way to insert text into, numbers into text. And these other things are sort of hacky. But I mean, I've needed this a million times in for example, axis labels, okay, things like that. And I have to say that by the time you are outputting it as a string, you typically don't want the trailing period. I mean,
right, but that's not a string, right? That's a quantity object, right? You can't see that it's a quantity object, right? But that's not a string.
I see, but the issue is, when is something like an axis label basically not even selectable, not copyable, and just something that is for human visibility only, so to speak? In those cases, you want to drop the trailing period. In the case where it is selectable or you copy it, then you do want the trailing period.
Right.
Okay, so
I'm not
that's
sure.
what we have to think through. Yeah.
I'm not sure string template always does the right thing, because if you do 3/4, it turns it into 0.75.
That's very bad. Probably. Yeah, I agree. That's bad. That's in the category of not, well, it probably isn't so bad, because most of the time you want something very stringified like that. But okay, basic point here. This is a quintessential LCC topic of how do we make it so that there is a way to get sort of number presentation in such a way that if the number is merely being presented, axis labels, strings, whatever else, it has sort of, for human pleasantness only reading, only if it is something that is copyable or reusable should it have the full, dot plumage and so on. Does that make sense?
Right, but I mean, right, people can construct, grids of arbitrary expressions, right? I mean, it can't go in and read that. So what's human presentation is a very...
I don't know. Well, I mean, a grid... Right, so we're going to need two things. We're going to need a function that is a form that says show numbers in a humanly pleasant way. That's point one. And point two, we're going to need to go through and look at places where we can obviously say, like if it's a pure string or a plot label or something like this, where we can obviously say you don't want the extra plumage. That makes sense?
Maybe.
Okay. Let's analyze what the function that does this should be. We don't have a name for it yet, but can we please look at the constellation of functions between text, string, decimal form, number form, and so on that might go around it? And let's bring back a proposal for that. And then let's also bring back a proposal for when that function should be auto-used in other places. Does that seem fair?
Sure.
It could be an option in number form, like we have number point, some value for number point.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea to begin with. It could certainly be there. That would be the heavily controlled version. I think that we'll need something which is a much simpler to use kind of immediate way to do this, but that sounds like a very good place to start.
Right. With other number cases, we had the options in number form, and then we created the specific version with a default, like decimal form.
I agree. Right. So this is something like, include trailing point or something.
Right.
Or maybe, number point goes to, I don't know if automatic already has some meaning, but
Yeah,
if
it's a
it does-
reasonable idea as well. Number point. Well, it's a little weird because that's kind of telling you what the number point is going to be. And no, you see, that's not going to work because you're saying in that case, I want the number point to be a comma, for continental European numbers, but I also want it to not appear when it's an integer. So I don't think that can be stuffed into the same option.
Yeah.
I think it has to be a separate option. I think, include number point, arrow, true, false. Well, I don't know what the heck false means. False just means, I don't really know. Something like that, though. It's. I agree. It's
it's probably
option around that.
trailing number point goes to true false, with true
Actually,
being the current behavior and false being.
There is a value already in number point goes to automatic, and it may be exactly this. Can you look at the documentation for a moment?
Yeah. Ha, ha, ha.
So that's probably been there since version 2 or thereabouts.
Yes. I think it might even have, well, yes, probably about version 2. By the way, a very, very, very picky point, but in these trailing lines, shouldn't there be more space around the vertical bar there, just as to make it at least as much space as there is around the bullet? Is there anybody here who's relevant to that?
Well, Jeremy should be here, so Jeremy D should be here. At least he was invited.
Billy is. So Billy, could you take that, please?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what do you know? Oh my gosh, all these years. So, okay. My basic point is number point are automatic should be inserted in plot label stuff, etc., etc., etc. Okay, and we might need a wrapper that does this.
Mm-hmm.
What should it be called?
Almost integer form.
Simple form.
I was going to say, and I've suggested this to, I think, Itai and Jose recently, that in a lot of cases, this is contextual, that you don't necessarily want to make that determination based on just a single numbers, but on a set of numbers altogether.
I don't think you ever want, I think you might want 5.0, 5.0, 4.5, whatever it is.
Exactly.
Right? That's good. But in the case, what I never want to see is 4.5, 5 point. Never want to see that. So, Brett, I think it's up to you to try and fix this for graphics. Okay. That makes sense? Hello.
I report it where I see it, to whoever's, whether that's my team or front end or.
I'm suggesting that somebody do a bit of a more systematic look at this. Okay. Or do I have to do it?
No, I don't think you have to do it, but I'm not sure. If somebody says plot label goes to some row construct.
That's a different case. I mean, in that case, okay, there's the question of whether one should have an outer number form around there that tries to prevent these things from being generated. That's an interesting question. I think the answer is probably yes. And if you do really want it generated, you can put a number form in there yourself to switch this off. But I do think that we need a what would be a, we want blah form. What's the blah?
Stephen?
I like
Come on, I'm
almost
not the only
infinite.
person that has this issue.
Well, I suppose we could have decimal less form. I don't know that that's actually
Weird, but it's
Chop form.
Ooh, that's not a bad
not
idea.
bad. Chopped form. I like that idea. Because it does
would
do
be-
something very similar to what chop does.
Right. So this is basically number form, only it defaults to number point goes to automatic.
I think so, pretty much, yes. And in fact, nicely, I mean, it isn't quite.
Well,
What is
chop,
the
right?
thing?
Chop
Just
does
it
things to zero. Right. There, I suppose it would be rounded form if you want the strict analogy, right? Because round will be the thing that will turn that 5.2. I mean, the only problem with rounded is that sounds like, you know, semicircles, right? But, you know, making your
Yes.
corners.
Well, not just that, but chopped is more apt because it's not touching 5.2, whereas rounded would turn that into a 5.
I guess that's true.
Well, I think provisionally chopped form is kind of nice.
Mm-hmm. I
And
mean,
what
I think
about-
I think it's certainly comprehensible, even if it's, you know, a slight variation on the true chop function.
Another suggestion. Sorry, somebody was about to suggest something else.
So what about your original point that this is not going to work with commas, for example? Should we have number point goes to comma, comma automatic?
I think so. It's not obvious we shouldn't enhance number form with a separate orthogonal option. Can you guys just have a think about that? And then let's introduce, we've got 3 things here. We've got hunting down graphics functions and other things and other places like this where we display, you know, numbers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And deciding, like for example, in a preferences, in a progress monitor, right? You're typically going to want to pick a certain number of digits and stick to it. Even if maybe you don't actually know, because it's like 0.1 megabytes downloaded, 0.2, then 7.6, 324.2, and so on. You could, I don't know when you want to get what I'm saying. We don't want to be flashing, you know, 8. Well, actually, maybe it's not so bad. I mean, 8, 8.5, I don't know. We just need to inventory these different cases. Fair?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, now let's come back to the original question.
Right.
Okay, so I've got an objection here. When this isn't actually in memory, the
I mean, we could say original size in memory, but right, it's not like we always know, right? If somebody decides to suddenly change dollar history length, right? It's not like, and I don't think we want the dynamic there continually asking,
No.
oh, is this history still valid?
Look, there are 2 cases, there are 3 cases, okay? We know it's okay, we know it's toast, and we don't know. Okay? Are all those cases distinguishable?
Do we ever actually know that it's okay?
What would make
mean-
it not okay? A change in the assignments for out, which we could tag separately.
Well,
And a
if
new session
right, well, if dollar history length is finite, right, it'll go out of scope.
Okay, fine. Honestly, I don't think people have had finite dollar history length since the days of
No, you're
Macintoshes
wrong.
with
People
handles.
regularly use finite history lengths.
Okay. Maybe I should too. I never
I
did.
was just gonna say people, you know, rightly or wrongly, think it's a cure for a lot of things.
Okay.
I only do either full or zero for testing of memory.
Yes. Okay, but in any case, I mean, the point that I'm making is a lot of those controls, like if the thing really is a dead animal here and nothing can bring it back to life, it's really unfortunate that it's got a giant row of controls where every controller is going to say, sorry, you're out of luck.
Certainly after the first press and the first failure, we know.
Oh, that's true. But I mean, you also know, to my mind, having a hook that, how does dollar history length actually work inside? Isn't there something which it knows at the time when doesn't it have to actually explicitly clear an out? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I don't remember. I would have to look at the code. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, when you change it, it might need to clear things out, but in the if it's constant, I'm not sure exactly how that goes.
Okay.
And the down values of out are not protected in any way. Users could selectively delete them.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
All right. However, if it's in a different session ID, we know it's toast.
Right.
Okay, so I think we've got two cases, different session ID, well, three cases, different session ID, it's already been pressed and it's been discovered to be toast, and we think it might still be edible bread.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's look at what we do in those cases, okay? Let's say we know it's toast. What do we do? What would we like to do? Do we want that bar there at all? Or, created in a previous session or something? Created in a previous session. It's really what we have to say, because none of that's going to work, is it?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's better to say, original expression not available, and
okay, that's fine.
And that will apply equally to the case where we thought it was still there, and then you pressed it, and oops, it actually went away. As to the, different, you're now in the new session.
Okay, will we still know the original memory size?
Yes.
Okay, then why don't we say original expression not available? No, just say full expression not available, paren original memory size, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
All in that gray, the same gray.
So.
We don't need to redden it or.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Don't redden it. I mean, it's like, okay, it is what it is. Now, graphic design wise, okay. Okay, so it knows this error message comes about in the case where it should come about. Okay, so that's the case where okay, so either if you press it or it was known to be dead, that's what we do. Okay, fine. For some reason, it's bothering me slightly. There's a bigger space here. Why is there a bigger space
a little bit.
Yeah,
maybe you could come in a little bit. Yeah,
I think that's on me. I'll equalize those spaces.
Thank you.
What the hell's this? That's some new bug. I shouldn't worry about that. That's a 13.
There's a known issue.
Oh, it's interesting.
Yeah.
The 9 patches.
And of course, you're in the prototype build, so there may be some experiment in there that's doing crazy things.
Is there a reason the font is so light for those numbers?
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
I think the idea is that when you press the store full expression, it darkens up a little bit.
Yeah, it was specified as with partial transparency to give the sense of this isn't really here.
I
But
see. That's not bad.
the next button over, Stephen, store full expression,
Yeah, I get it.
changes the browser.
I love that. How would I name that iconized expression?
That's been installed, right? Well, at least the last time we discussed this, right, it was going to be attached to a selection raft, but selection rafts were displaced by other front-end features. So, I mean, basically, what you would need to do is like wrap that and iconize and give it a second argument with the name and evaluate in place, which is kind of ugly, but that's what's available at this instant in time.
Yeah, okay, so it's ugly. So we don't like that. But so what does iconize expression do? I see. I think that should be renamed. I think that should say iconize expression in place.
Okay.
What do you think? What do other people think?
Okay with that.
I mean, I think it's right. It's not different from the selection, right? If you type some input and then you select it and right click or look at the
Yeah, then it says
menu.
iconize expression.
Right. So
I know, but it's just a little weird that it it feels okay. Well, let's see. If I say show more here, oops, I need another one. Is it in fact going 2x lines every time?
it's going to, I think, roughly 2x.
It's calling short with double the size that it called it last time. Whether that translates to 2x times is up to short.
Right. Then obviously, if you have very complicated expressions inside, then short's ability to estimate the actual number of lines will be limited.
Okay. All right. Now, obviously, the thing I'd really, really like to see is for us to make this active somehow. I think we should have a separate project, perhaps even on the project list, to do with elided expressions. I don't know whether Lou has comments on this.
Sounds like a useful thing to figure out.
Well, I mean, something we've been talking about for 20 years.
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by making that active.
Well, I mean that you can click on it to get more stuff there. So that, for example, you could have rather than a lot of this stuff, you could just click on that and it would let you, because that's the place where you want to go. You say, I want to see more here, not I'm going to go down to the bottom and see, because by the time I've got multiple screens here, it's very inconvenient to go back and say.
Right. Yeah. So in the case where you have multiple ... dots, then you want to say, make this ... bigger. Okay. Now
exactly. And also with short, yes, it's very common to end up with something where you have list and then one shortened thing, comma, list, and then two other shortened things. And it's like, I want to see the third one. Let me click on that one to see more of it. That's a pretty common thing to see in output, all kinds of different kinds of output. I mean, short often has multiple iconized pieces, is what I'm saying.
Yep.
Okay, let's see what happens if I do this.
Right, so now it changed color because it's really, really there. So, if you could quit the kernel and then you could evaluate that output expression, I think the buttons would work too, right? Or
they do, yes.
Yes.
I find this border very unduly thick. Could we just make it thinner?
Okay.
I mean, I just don't understand why it's quite so thick.
Right. I mean, we don't want it to be too thin, right? Because we're trying to contrast it with the ethereal. But I agree that it could maybe be a smidge.
Could we mark it with like half the width or something? Okay. Comment from our live stream from Nihil, pointing out that if we have a better summary of what number point goes to automatic does, we should put it in the documentation. Absolutely. No, actually, it's not terrible what's there, but, and I can also imagine in modern times, well, I don't know. There's just, we got to dig into this particular thing and check all the consequences and so on. Okay. And Ethan says, did you improve the truncation display for expressions with high levels of nesting? I'm sorry to say, I suspect the answer to that is no. I suspect that that's still using the old short technology. Am I correct? Somebody
As
comment
far
on
as
that,
I
please?
know. I don't think anything has been done with that.
I think that's code that I wrote a very, very long time ago, the short code. It's disappointing that it hasn't been updated. Okay, in any case.
Well, the code in box forms was not written by you.
That's correct. Oh,
the-
yeah, only the input, only the output form stuff.
Yeah.
But I keep on being told how hard a problem it is, but I know I solved that problem for output form. And it was tricky. It was somewhat tricky. It uses some, amount of energy or something, and it passes these energies down with certain weights and all that kind of stuff.
Right, but output form doesn't need to know, has access to all the available information, which is, the current line width, and that's it. Whereas, if there are template boxes, the kernel may not even really know how something is displayed, much less how big the front end will render.
Yeah, that's an ugly thing. We should have a discussion segment at some point, maybe in an LCC meeting, about the future of short.
Okay.
And what the actual issues are. And whether in modern times, with all the new UX stuff that we have and all the new kinds of boxes we have, maybe there's a different way to handle it. I mean, here's a point that I would like to make. If we had micro opening, we could get away with much less wonderful kind of choice of where to put the elision, I think. In other words, if we'd sprayed multiple elisions in here, okay, if you can just go in and say, well, I want to open that elision, great, fine. We closed some elision more than we should have closed it, but at least it's easier to revert, if that makes sense. And it might make it easier to do this if we just say, if somebody's worried, oh, well, making sense that okay. Let's see. All right. So here, stored in notebook, 8 megabytes. That looks fine. Yeah. And iconize still works. That's all good. Billy has actual examples here.
I don't know if I made it too thin now that I'm looking at the live stream again. Oh man, it got bigger for some reason on.
Well, I don't know that it got bigger on. Whoops. I don't know whether this. I don't know why it does that. Okay.
I like the middle one.
Really? Why don't you like this one? This one seems fine to me. I mean, this is an expression, and it's fine, and
Well, to me, it just seems a bit too light. I mean, I can't even necessarily, like, underneath where it says original gray, I can't even really tell that there's still a line there. I can infer that it exists, but I can't actually.
Well, okay, I think that's an artifact of what you see over the, because it looks just fine to me. I think this one is going to be the winner. Now, the only question is whether this double line down here makes any sense. I also think that stored in notebook is way too big there. You know that, right? That font size needs to be this font size, not this font size.
Yeah, there's some weird magnification thing going on.
Okay, don't capitalize all the words. We don't want that. Full expression
Okay.
not available, not cap all the words. Okay, original size and memory, don't cap those. And I like the idea of doing this. Yeah, I wouldn't make it that. I like the idea of you're dotting it here. This is good. Yeah, that seems fine. All right, so this is my suggestion. Now the double lines, they look a little weird to me. Is Jeremy here?
I think they were originally your suggestion.
Well, okay, I don't
but-
necessarily.
but-
It might be
now that we
weird with
see-
the rounded corners.
Okay, this is one of these things where
The-
Jeremy will have an immediate opinion and I don't.
This design did come from Jeremy. Billy, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was yeah.
He wanted the space between the double, yeah.
All right, well then we'll go with it. Okay, what am I seeing here?
Right, that opens the preferences field where you
So-
can,
Right. There's a forthcoming update to the preferences dialog
Thank
where when it's open, you can open it and bring the user's eye to a particular line item in the dialog. That's what this button will use
Okay,
to bring the attention to the input field of list and change the actual value of dollar output size limit.
okay. I really would love it if we could do just a cosmetic update of the preferences dialog. They look like they come from sometime in the, before the.
well, that's in the works.
It's
I
in
mean,
process.
Okay,
it's-
good. All right. Okay. Anything else for the output size limiter?
Do we want to? Can I make one more comment about that font color?
Yeah.
I mean, it just feels like it's the exact same thing I would get is if like in current front end, I evaluated range of 10 to the 6th, and then I changed the input, and so it did the undo grading.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not bad because really the output is disconnected from the input.
Yes.
I mean, it
In a
is,
different
but
way.
Right, and of course you have the gray background, which sort of tells you it's a different sort of disconnection.
I think it's pretty okay.
So what happens if both are true? If you have the output limiter and you've changed the input?
Then it will lighten even more, I believe. Easy enough to test.
It didn't. It didn't.
Well,
That
Yeah.
did, but the other
What-
didn't.
That one, the other one wasn't generated in this session, so it
Oh, are you
doesn't have
sure?
a connection.
Doesn't seem to do
You need to
that.
actually
Oh,
change
well,
it.
yeah.
Just adding a space, it knows that adding a space doesn't change anything.
Okay, I get it.
right. I mean, but
I
when
think
you
this is good.
first did that range of 10 to the 6th, it came up with that light thing, which is, it's not completely disconnected, conceptually to people, I think. I mean, that's the current output in the current session. Even if it's not, stored locally in the notebook.
Look, what's your suggestion? I mean, we could give a slight color to the tint to the background here, but I don't think that's a great idea. I think it's fine. I mean, this is a very temporary thing. This graying will happen only very locally. This graying is not something you'll
No,
see
I'm not talking about
tomorrow.
the undo graying.
No, I know that, but
Okay,
I'm
yeah.
saying that's when you did that.
Right, and you can if you restore to 6, it'll know that you've restored the original expression even. So that's how ephemeral it is.
Well, no, that's not what I'm talking about.
I know. You're saying you
I-
see this in something. You didn't just generate it because you know it if you just generated it. You see this lying in a notebook, and you say you might be confused that it came from the graying of something because of disconnection from the input. And I'm saying that's going to be really rare because most disconnection that comes from editing is going to be extremely local.
I agree with Stephen on that particular point.
I think it's going to be okay. Let's try.
Okay.
I mean, good thing to raise, but I think it's going to be okay. All right, can we move on here?
Lou, any last minute questions, concerns? I think
Nope, we've got a couple of solid things to change, and then we're good.
Good to go. Good stuff. All right, on we go. MapApply.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you, guys. MapApply as the name for triple @ sign.
Yep.
Seems like a good idea.
Right. It's implemented. There is, I mean, if you want to review this documentation, I noticed this weird thing on apply where the option was only documented in example. So I added a note if you want to
Which
review
option?
that. Heads.
Oh, that's
Apply.
crazy.
What's
okay. No, that it was only documented in an example. That's crazy. It was probably done in version 1.
Right. So if you, I don't know if you want to review
I
that.
see.
That
I
one
see.
note.
It looks fine.
Okay. And then, I mean, the one real question is, do we want to use triple @ in formatting?
Yeah, that's a
Right.
good question. Personally, I would be, well, the only reason to do that would be for compatibility with earlier versions. Right? Because if somebody has a piece of code that says hold of f triple @ x, oh, now you're changing it to MapApply.
Right. Well, that's what you said we should do.
Well,
Yeah, but it will parse as MapApply now.
Right. But if you keep it as triple @ then it'll work equally. Other than parsing to the, it will evaluate equally in both.
Right. So if you have a .wl file that has triple @ in it, or and you feed it to an earlier version, all will be good.
Yep.
If you have a held expression with triple @ in it, it will fail. I think that's okay.
No, if you have a literal MapApply in it, it will fail.
I know, but also if you have a held expression, I understand. But if you have it,
right, as long as it's triple @ it will parse just fine.
I see what you're saying. So if you exported it as a held expression, the serialized form will have triple @ and it'll all be good.
If we add the output formatting, which we haven't yet.
No, what do you mean? No. This is all good. That what you've got here, I'm just yattering to myself that if in an earlier version, if in this version it came out with MapApply, the thing you've got will not run in an earlier version.
Correct. But
I think that's okay, but can we think it through and try and, we should get this in sooner rather than later.
I mean, let me point out that both apply and map use their operators in their output formatting.
They do.
Yeah.
Well, then this should as well.
Okay.
Yeah, then this should as well. Then we have no backward compatibility problem and we're all good.
Yep.
Okay. I guess my question would be if I have a new front end that knows about MapApply.
Yep.
And I connect to a kernel that is older.
No, there's no problem. There's no change in the boxes. The only change is
and the parsing.
Okay.
Right. The one difference you'll notice in the front end is if you hover over that triple @ now, Stephen. Oh, I guess that should now say MapApply. I guess
good.
It didn't get into the latest build for some reason.
Right. But that would be the right thing for it to say, and we'd be all good.
Yep.
Are there any other special forms that do not translate, that translate into a special case of an existing function? I think this is the only one.
It's the only one I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay. All right. All right. Oh boy.
Right. And so, you know, I'm not saying that there's necessarily any issue here, but these are things sort of I've noticed that I feel are a little weird. And, you know, we should at least
Okay.
sort of
Okay.
talk about
So
them.
hold on. Let me just understand something. Is this the same as issues that I was raising, or is this orthogonal, or is this what is the relationship here?
I am not sure what issues you're referring to. So these are lists I came up independently when I was reviewing documentation written by Ian. So
in my view, they are very related to what you suggested, Stephen, last week. And Ian has already created a documentation page for a new function to implement that.
What new function?
How do you call it, Ian? Ancestor tree, I think.
Oh, this is the question of what I was talking about, where you want a certain number of levels on the tree.
Exactly. Yes. So
why isn't that tree take?
Take. Because this, I mean, we are not talking about sequence specs.
Well, but I'm saying it's levels, right? I'm saying I want the top 3 levels on this tree, or
yes.
Perhaps I want to drop the bottom 2 levels on the tree. To me, those seem like tree take and tree drop. What are you proposing for that?
So I think Ian has created a new function called ancestor tree.
That sounds confusing to me, but anyway, okay, so let's make a random tree. Okay, so now what do you want to do?
I'm not sure the code is in the X kernel yet.
Okay, but what would it roughly do?
I mean, yeah, so what it would do...
Say, well, okay, go ahead.
Ian, do you want to explain?
Ian, hello.
If you're talking, we can't hear you.
Okay, well, perhaps he has some problem. I can explain. So the idea would be to specify either, just specify a position spec of the nodes you want to preserve. And so you will preserve everything above all those nodes. And it can be something like tree level 3. And so it will be everything above tree level 3.
I think it should be tree check and tree drop, because I think they're the obvious, things, because I think that they're, and then that the spec is essentially a level spec. Okay, so I admit.
It's a position spec. It's this generalized form of position spec in which we can also specify levels. But with drop, what could we return if we drop the top of the tree? And this relates to Itai's comment.
Yeah.
Right. At least this first comment about the heads.
Okay. This is the new proposed ancestor tree.
Yes, 2 weeks ago you called it tree top.
I just don't get the name ancestor tree at all. I just don't get it at all.
Yeah. So Ian was commenting recently that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the operation you were wanting was just these, like the top 3 levels. This is a more general operation that's for any set of positions.
Okay.
So
but what happens if I just have a swath in the middle of the tree?
Well, it preserves all of the ancestors so that you still get something connected and still something that's a tree.
Okay, I would completely not understand that from ancestor tree. I mean, I'm thinking genealogy, and I'm thinking, Well,
it's the ancestor of all of the positions that you specify.
Right. I mean, that's what I understood.
I'd never get it. Or I agree, when you explain it that way, it does make some sense.
It's true that this is a type of function in which we usually have tree verb. But we
ancestors?
couldn't come up with a verb, which is good enough here.
Okay, so the basic point is if I pick 13, you are going to give me the tree above 13, reaching down to 13.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So and that'll be sort of the minimal path. So 3, just 7,
Or I
9,
get 31,
11.
but I don't get this subtree over here.
Right.
Okay, and you don't get 26.
Right.
Where's 26? Oh, I see. But how will I get those things?
You specify 26 too. It's a list of positions.
Okay, but if I want everything down to level, I want everything down to this level. How do I specify that?
The second argument would be tree level, like some tree level spec, and then that's what it would do.
But this is the subtrees on that level. So if I specify this level here, this guy is left out in the cold, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's not going to work. It's not going to work.
You say levels 0 through that, and you're
look, this is a really simple operation, okay, that people are going to want all the time. Just show me the top n levels in the tree.
I think something like tree level take makes sense for that.
Fine.
Right.
Fine. This is an interesting operation as well, but I think we need that. I don't know whether tree level take is the right name, given that tree level is such a noun type form. Well, maybe it is.
Right, and I guess there's no negative. This doesn't make this.
Yes, well, tree drop, tree level drop makes sense for the bottom of the tree. Oh, but the drop would normally be from the top.
Right, but the take the take part doesn't make sense for negative levels, right? Unlike take, where you can take the 3 from the end and you still have an expression, right? You can't take the.
What about treetop take? Yeah, something like that. It's the you want. See the typical thing. This will be
Christmas tree take.
What that? Tree, one of those things you put on the top of a Christmas tree. I don't know. Look, here's what this is useful for. This is useful for discovery when you have big trees. And you're not going to want to know, oh, I've got element number such and such, blah, blah, blah. All you know is you just got a tree with 1,000 elements. I want to see roughly what's going on in it. Okay? Does that make sense? Just like when you have a big list, you very often will say, take list comma 10, just to see the first 10 elements to see roughly what's going on. This is the same idea.
But in tree drop, we would get in general a list of trees?
No, I didn't mean that. I mean, it doesn't make sense. I want to be able to say, look, I mean, that's horrible. I just want the. I don't like tree level take. I think it's obscure.
Prune?
No, that suggests you're going in and you're going to make a topiary. Never mind.
Well, not necessarily. I mean,
we could have a topiary function that goes and
it turns your tree into Mickey Mouse.
An Edward Scissorhands function.
Okay, so look, tree. We need something. I like the idea of this function. But it is not serving the need that we have for this function.
Mm-hmm.
Wait a minute, tree select. That's the operator form of tree select that you're proposing to use there. Is that correct?
Yep.
That's a bit weird. Does tree level, could it be used as an operator form?
Yeah, tree level, tree cases, and tree select can be used as operator forms in like tree extract.
So this goes in the direction we were discussing last week of the generalized position specs and part specs. And so this is the attempt of having symbolic position specs.
Yes.
Right, but yes, but I'm well. I mean, we've now gone off on this tangent, but the point I'm making is sort of much more pedestrian, right? I have a span of 2,3 there, right? And there's this distinction, which maybe isn't wrong. Maybe this is exactly the right thing, but right, if you extract, then you keep the head. If you extract a span, you keep the head. But if you tree extract a span, you sort of lose the head. You get a list of these individual nodes. And
that's weird.
So
yes.
This is where it connects. So for example, when you were mentioning tree drop, we had the same problem. Do we return a list of things or do we connect them back with a single tree head? Now, the problem is that what do you put in the as payload of that new root? Because why should we put the old payload of the old root? We are not interested in that anymore. It could be an empty root. That could be. It's like
wait a second. So you're saying these tree extract could be, this could be far down in the tree. If I do a tree extract on thing 11.
Exactly. We extract things from there.
Let's go tree 11, percent 11. Let's do 20. What can I do here? I can say 20. Well, let's do 20 to 23.
What's that?
No, that's not going to work. Right. These are right. These are positions. So you have like 1 through 6, right, at the first level.
Well, I don't want 1 through something. I want something different. I want something.
No. The available positions at level 1 of this tree are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 corresponding.
So I have to go 1. I want to get down into here. How do I get down into the big bushy part?
Well,
you perhaps want 3 cases if you want to specify the payload.
Right. Extract is a structural operation. It doesn't care about the labels.
Okay, so
right.
1, 6, 1, 2, and then let me go 1, 3.
6, 1.
What? Where did I want to do that? 1, 6.
1 only has 1 child.
I know, so I just went to 1.
There is no 1, 6.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I should be 6. Okay, so now we're down here at this level. We've got these 3, and so what you're saying is, if we were to put, so that's what
Yes. So if we connected this with a single root, what should it be 7? Why do we worry about 7 now?
Well, because we want to maintain the correspondence between expressions and trees.
We have inspiration always.
We would have a 4, not a 7, right?
Yes, we have a 4.
In this case, but if that list had been lists of disconnected positions, they may not have a common.
But if it's a list of disconnected positions, then we get a list, right? If we're in the multi-spec case, we get 1 tree for each spec, right? That's how extract works. If you give it, a list of multiple specs, you get a list of results, 1 for each spec. Now that spec may or may not preserve the head.
Right. And so what tree extract does is it just keeps giving you arbitrarily more and more nested lists. as you have more and more multi-part specs instead of having that property.
Sorry, say that again. I mean, this looks. Let's see. I'm sorry. I think it's hopeless to rejoin these from something here. I mean, unless what would extract do?
my claim is if you created the corresponding nested things in
Okay, tree expression of percent 11, right? Is that going to give me that? Okay.
right.
So now I do the same exact thing, right?
Yep,
I
you do
say,
extract of that.
what the heck did I get here?
You got
I see. So this is a prunery of
right.
This is the pruning.
It kept the 4, and then it gave the the 3 arguments of the 4, right? So that 13, 17, 16 became a 13 of 17 of 16. The 24 became 24.
Yeah, I get it. So actually now I'm beginning to agree with you that the as if expression thing isn't a totally silly thing. Is there an argument against that?
No, I'm fine with that.
But being able to get this would just be a list here instead of a span.
Right. So if you replace that one span 3 with just one.
Well, what happens if I go 1, 2, 3 here?
It's the same thing.
As the span.
And you'll need percent or some such. Percent 15 is that?
Right. And so would we also do that for like tree level tree cases where unlike span, it's not necessarily the children? It could be any subtree.
No, because doesn't cases do something different? Cases doesn't do this. Cases just returns a list of the things that are the cases.
Well, I'm saying when we use tree cases, like the operator form, it's like a symbolic spec. It's like a multi-part spec. But
doesn't cases
span is always just at the one level below, but cases, if you replace in your N of 14, is instead of a span there, you did a tree cases of something.
Okay, you're doing the tree cases within tree extract.
Yeah, just change the 1 through 3 to tree cases.
But that represents a list, right? So this should be like adding a new list around that position.
I don't know. This is a weird thing where you're using a selector, we're using an operator form of a selector inside like that. And that's exactly my comment. All right, we're going to have to wrap for today here. I mean, there's clearly a lot more to talk about. I do want to talk about, Vishal suggests on the live stream, level limited tree. I think it needs to be simpler than that. It's like, I just want to see the top of this tree. Just want to get a little bit into this tree. For an expression, it will be shallow. That's what would show you the analogous thing. I mean, maybe we should have a tree form that is, maybe we should make shallow work on trees. That would at least give us the display version. That actually is not a bad idea. To be able to say shallow of the tree, comma 10 or something, or comma 5, and have a form where it has ... dots underneath it. That might serve the need that I have there. You get what I'm saying? I think I also have a need for this, but it could be slightly more obscure, but that would seem like an obvious thing to do, is to just be able to sort of eyeball what's in the tree by doing shallow. What does a tree do if it gets really, really big? Does it have an output limiter?
The only output limiter we have is for the number of children, just like 15.
But what is it? You mean that's just on a single level?
Hmm.
But if the thing is a giant piece of shrubbery, what does it do?
Just a giant piece of shrubbery.
I think we should think about output limiters, and I think we should think about
I mean,
shallow.
maybe the right thing for a tree that gets very large is for it to automatically be like a tree outline,
What is a tree outline?
like the collapsible view.
Do we have?
You know, I think a graph above a certain size, like if you have
Yeah, it just goes
a
into
million,
yes.
just turns into a summary box.
I'm well aware of this since I generate large graphs all the time. Yes, that's correct. And graph plot will explicitly do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bob on livestream suggests tree top of like 3, and I agree as an operator form, it's really quite nice. I mean, tree top of 3, 3 isn't totally terrible as far as I'm concerned. I just worry about treetop being more like an option where you're saying, you know, where to, and actually, no, you know, that's not going to happen because that's more like the orientation is top and so on. I think I unfortunately have to go.
Okay, well, we can pick this up next time, or maybe if there's a dedicated trees meeting somewhere.
I think we probably want a dedicated trees meeting. This is clearly, we've got lots of stuff to talk about here. It's a deeply entwined subject, so to speak.
Okay.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks, guys. Lots of good
Thanks.
things. All right, thanks to folks on live stream.